We are back ahead of game week 31 with your attacking assets. Hopefully you've seen the defensive one with myself, Ben Dinnery, and my esteemed co-host, Mr. Jason McKenna. It's great to have you back. I see you more than I see the wife. I see you more than I see the kids. My on-screen lover from Liverpool, or just down from Liverpool, or just along, or London, whatever. We're just lovers. How are you, Jace?
I mean, I was thinking the other day that we're almost like opposites. You're from the north, I'm from the south.
That's what attracts, you see.
Yeah, yeah, opposites do attract, and so I'm trying to concentrate because I do need the concentration. I think the reason why he's doing this is because I'm so close to you in FPL. You want to put me off so that you steal the charge towards the end of the season and that you end game week 38 on top of me. And, I'm not going to allow that, Ben, because we've done some research here. We're going to help everybody else, but also, I'm helping you, you're helping me towards ending the season on a high and hopefully lots of green arrows. First point that I want to start off with this game week 31, I think it's a big worry for some in the community, is I'm worried not owning a Manchester City because obviously they're playing Leeds. But the other point is the Pep roulette wheel. It's probably notched up a further bit now because they didn't win comfortably against Dortmund, so there's still a lot to do in that tie. They've got a cup final. They're going to be playing so many games over the next few weeks. FA Cup thrown in there as well. They're going for a historic quadruple. They could do it, but also they can do it because they've got such a large squad depth. And so, yes, I don't own a Manchester City asset for this game against Leeds, but then who is definitely going to play? We saw Sterling kind of rested. Is he going to start? But then not necessarily. De Bruyne was great against Dortmund. He got a goal, but he might be rested. Gundogan got an assist. Foden was in on the score sheet as well. We just don't know who's going to be playing it, and I think this is the big worry. There are a lot of money in those Manchester City assets, and the other thing is who's going to be playing. So it might seem a bit of a waste, whereas you can put money elsewhere in guaranteed starters, the likes of Fernandes, Kane, maybe even Salah now, because we weren't so happy with Liverpool, but now they're entering this really good run of fixtures. If they do get knocked out of the Champions League, maybe they might be better to own. But yeah, City, there's a lot against them, even though they're the best team in the league at the moment. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings there, Ben?
Absolute minefield. I've got no idea whatsoever. If we look on the last, I think it's 4 game weeks, Premier League to Premier League, Pep's averaging more than 5 changes per game. Now you take Edison out of the equation, so that effectively means that, around about maybe 60% of his team is being changed from game week to game week. Now, again, you could probably say that Diaz might be in 90% of those lineups. So then you're saying, well, actually, is it more like maybe 70% of that team is changing? We've seen Mendy start at left back last weekend, grabs himself a goal. Does he start this weekend? Is it Zinchenko? Does Cancelo go in there, or does he put Cancelo on the right and drop Kyle Walker? You've got Laporte. With a fully fit squad and with such strength and depth, I mean, I really honestly don't know. I think we'll go back to maybe the early days where we would always say De Bruyne would be the one that I would hang my hat on. To some degree of certainty, but the rest, no. He's had Jesus and he's had Aguero, and he's even going into games now and he's still starting with a false 9. So, I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. The only 2 picks or 3 would be Edison, Diaz, and De Bruyne at a push. But you're talking a lot of money, and while he might start games, there's always going to be the risk of restricted minutes. Once games have been put to bed, and City have got nothing to play for.
this is the point, is it's a lot of money in not a guaranteed starter, whereas yes, other teams aren't scoring as many or keeping as many clean sheets, but at least you know the players are going to be starting on the pitch, because one is better than naught. You know, looking at your team, if the player doesn't play at all, you've got 0 points for quite a hefty price tag. Whereas, you know, you might get in a Tottenham asset, they might concede a goal and then they've only got 1 kind of appearance point, but that is still infinitely better than naught. And talking of Tottenham, and we're talking about attack here, they're in good goal scoring form at the moment, and this is ahead of a double game week. I think one of the big discussion points is how sensible is it to invest in maybe a treble up or a double up kind of going into that. But then on the flip side, I think that the Newcastle game shows exactly why I'm not comfortable going strong in on them towards the end of the season. They had plenty of chances to put that game to bed. And I think I even said it last week, is the thing with Tottenham is they kind of go 1-0 up or 2-0 up against a side, and then they're happy to shut up shop, and then they'll concede 1 or 2 goals and be pressed towards the end of the game. And it's dangerous for them, and they'll either end up drawing or maybe losing the game or just about winning, but it looks like a struggle. And it is the Mourinho way. Mourinho will blame the fact that he's not got the players or the squad or whatever. But for FPL, I think Kane, everybody should be owning. I think everybody does basically own him. And he's been involved in the 15 goals that they've scored. The other one that is possibly on the horizon is Heung-min Son, but he's not been hitting the heights, has he, recently? I mean, looking at his individual performances, he's got no goals. Expected goals of 0.61, which sometimes he does overperform, a 2.36 expected goal involvement. But, you know, even Gareth Bale, who's been in and out of the team recently, has higher data than that, and 4 goals to boot as well over the last 6 game weeks. So, you know, it's hard to kind of justify Son. It's hard to justify a lot of those people in the Tottenham team that aren't called Harry Kane. So what are your thoughts and feelings for this double game week on the horizon, and also the run towards the end of the season, which is patchy? I would say there is a great kind of, so game week 32, there's the double up. There's a blank in game week 33, 34, 35, 36 and 37 is a great run though. And then there is the difficult game of Leicester. So there is kind of form for the attackers of Harry Kane, and that's about it for me.
Yeah, pulled the trigger on the wild card last week and brought Harry Kane back. Of course, I started with Harry at the beginning of the campaign when he was out of favour with everyone, and I got rid when he, I think it was the hamstring injury, so just brought him back, and look, he looks to be a shoe-in, you know, during the business end of the period. And I'm with you. You're looking at who else in that Tottenham team can you rely on? In terms of form, nobody. I think in terms of minutes, I think Heung-min Son is probably the one that looks most nailed to at least get game time and to get his starts. Of course, he was on the bench last week. I think it was a good decision from Marino. Son was coming off the back of that injury. I think Carlos had scored, you know, in his previous Tottenham game, so deserved that place. But he only lasted until half time. You know, we know that Son inherently can cope with the demands of playing week in and week out ordinarily. So, you know, coming into back-to-back games within the same, you know, 7-day period shouldn't be an issue for Son. And if I was going to double up, and it's a big if, because it would be punty. Again, I'm looking for who I would perceive to be, you know, starters guaranteed, and it's only Son. You know, I'm not convinced with Gareth Bale. I think there's a fitness element there also as well. But, you know, he's been quite vocal of the fact that, you know, I don't know if conversations have been had, but I am not staying at Tottenham. Let's just put that out there. I'm not staying. I'm going back to Real Madrid. The only reason I've come to Tottenham is because I want to state my claim in the Wales squad, make sure that I've got minutes under my belt, you know, for those European Championships. In is there a part of Jose Mourinho that starts to think, well, hold on a minute, let's have a look at some of the players that are going to be here next season. I'm building it, long gone when Gareth Bale's back in Madrid, sunning himself up, and at the Euros, I've still got a squad here to try and manage. So let's do that, in these remaining sort of, what would it be, maybe 7 or 8 games or what we have left. So Bale is a huge question mark. Lucas Moura has improved in terms of his performances, and maybe even some of the metrics would suggest that. But again, I see so many players in and around those sort of attacking areas who are fairly interchangeable. With Lo Celso's back, Lamella's back, Steven Bergwijn is available. You've got Carlos, you've got Bale and Son. So you've got all of those players sort of vying for his place in that starting 11, and it's just difficult to see who Jose Mourinho would line up alongside Harry Kane.
Bit of also tumultuousness in the Tottenham lineup. Tottenham, it's not clear who's going to be there next season. I mean, is Mourinho going to be there next season? The results from this team, for what I would say is a fairly hefty expenditure as well. Mourinho has been given a fair lead of money. He's not been kind of reined in, maybe like Pochettino was. So there are a lot of questions there. And at the moment, I mean, for the double game week, there's a lot of focus on that. But are you comfortable playing Heung-min Son every game till the end of the season? I mean, maybe with that hit of 34 to 37, but if you're bringing him in now or next game week, there is that blank in 33. You do have to contend with that. So yes, Son is probably the only other one, but I like buying players that are in form. But there is that flip side of Heung-min Son only stays quiet for so long. Maybe it's gambler's fallacy to expect him to start this upturn. But I wouldn't bet against him in those game weeks. So it's a very difficult discussion that I have in my head. Obviously, Harry Kane's fine tone, probably captaincy pick for a lot of those game weeks as well. But, with a lot of other teams playing well, doing good bits, it's kind of hard to justify getting them in. Everton, I think, moving the discussion on to them, they really annoyed me last game week. They should have done a lot more against Crystal Palace. And I think as well, talking about maybe teams that we're kind of evaluating, Leeds have got been thrown in there as well. So Everton, I think Digne, we said, is kind of all right to own at the moment. We'll see how that goes. DCL as well. He had quite a few good opportunities. They had 2.83 XG against Crystal Palace. Actually, the funniest thing for me was the goal that was scored had one of the lowest XG of all the shots all game. It had a 0.07 XG for going in, but James Rodriguez put it away. So Everton, I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. But with Leeds, I have Rafinha in my side. Going forward, they do score a lot. I think maybe Bielsa and Leeds might be one of the only teams where they're not affected by their position, their kind of mentality. I think Bielsa will push those players towards the end of the season. We have seen it previously in the Championship where that's caused fatigue and problems, but I think the international break has actually been quite a big saving grace for them in many aspects. Their players got a lot of rest. So is it all right to kind of ship out those Leeds assets, the Rafinhas, the Bamfords now, and then maybe get them in towards the end of the season where the fixtures kind of go green? Because they're quite easy to manoeuvre in and out at their price point, Ben.
I own Rafinha, so I've just got the one player involved in Leeds. And what I would say is, you touched upon it. You like to follow players in form, and while good teams can transcend fixtures, we know that Leeds are going to create chances. They're going to score goals against any opposition, just given their high energy style of play, their press. And I think, given the form that Rafinha's in, he can almost, transcend those fixtures as well. Because you're thinking, Leeds will create anyway. And given the form that he's in and the season that he's had, I still think he's worth a hold. I really do. I think, from set pieces as well. So, it could be backs against the wall performances, and Rafinha could pop up with a free kick, dead ball. So I think it's worth keeping faith with him, and I'll be seeing the end of the season out with him on my side.
He's on my bench at the moment, and kind of looking at the games. So they play Man City, Liverpool, and Man United next. I'd say two of those three teams have made mistakes. Man United let Brighton score last weekend. They're not impenetrable, whereas I'd say Man City are very hard to score against. Goals per game conceded of Man U and Liverpool have been above 1, whereas Man City is obviously quite low with 0.68. Every team that they're playing after that, I would say, are very scoreable against. Brighton, Tottenham. I am throwing Tottenham in there because they haven't been great this season. Newcastle, no offence to your boys, but they scored against them and they looked very good in that game. Tottenham afforded them a lot of chances, a lot of goal-scoring opportunities. Then Burnley, Southampton, West Brom, they're all good games that a lot of people are kind of thinking, right, we'll get Leicester in from game week 36 onwards. But I think there is that ability of Rafinha. He's cheap enough that you don't have to play him every game week and you're not kind of that bothered. But towards this end of the season, this COVID season as well, having a strong bench is a good thing. And Rafinha is a strong play. He's not too expensive that you can kind of rest and it's not of a big detriment to your squad. I would say Jesse Lingard, you have to get him in your team. I don't think we even need to discuss that. Ridiculous kind of data. 10 goal involvements since game week 22 when he came in, 10 shots in the box over the last 6 game weeks, XGI of 2.84. He's looking fantastic. We've touched upon Wolves in the defensive discussions, but I do want to throw it out to you. Pedro Neto, the side have nothing to play for, but that might mean shackles off. Last game week, they did do, fairly well. Pedro Neto, I was kind of upset that he wasn't involved more in those goals, but they did score 2 against a good West Ham defence. Maybe that's going to be the way that Wolves kind of go forward. Does that kind of come into your thinking at all, Ben?
Not really. I was a Pedro Neto owner, and yeah, look, he did, but I just think that the players around him just haven't been, up to his level, and he's a young lad. Those levels of performances aren't going to be consistent. He's not going to be returning every single game week. Wolves haven't been playing on the front foot. It's been fairly passive. We did see Traore, was that his first assist of the season, I believe, on Monday. Maybe that's a springboard, to take him through to the end of the season. And you know what? He may be looking at a potential move away from the club in the summer. He was somebody that's been heavily linked all over Europe on the back of last season's performance. He's done absolutely squat this year. If he finishes strongly, does that then put him at the forefront of people's minds once again? Because he's disappointed, and he'll want to rectify that. So maybe he can take a little bit of confidence and kick on. If that happens, and maybe Fabio Silva as well, who grabbed his goal, if they can all take that little bit of confidence and they can use that as a little bit of a stepping stone to take them through and finish strongly this season, to get them off to a good, good confidence levels high going into the next campaign, then all well and good. But it's too punty for me. If I look at those previous sort of 29 games, there is just nothing in there that really merits a place in my particular team, unfortunately.
I think the FPL community was left in frenzy this weekend as well, because I think it was Pundits put Jimenez back in his FPL squad. I mean, is there any truth that Big Jimmy's going to be back at all soon?
The expectation or the hope was always that Jimenez would return this season. However, given the gravity and the severity of the actual injury itself, regardless of what's happening on the training pitches and the player being managed, we're in a fairly controlled environment. it's shackles off when you go into the game, and there's a lot of uncontrollable, within that, highly fueled, high energy, intense atmospheres. And what I would say is, medical protocol would state, they will not look at any corners. They will not, put him in any risk whatsoever. The player himself would be itching to get back out there, but they've got a great medical team down at Wolves, and there's no way that unless they're 100% certain, that he's absolutely fine and there aren't going to be any, major complications. Then, so at the minute, can I see him back in the Wolves squad before the end of the season? Yes. Do I think there will be, opportunities for minutes? I'm not really sure, to be honest. Psychologically is going to be a big thing as well. So it would be more, sentimental pick, because it's not somebody that you would expect to come out and just hit the ground running. He's going to need minutes in his legs. He's going to need to take a few knocks. He's going to have to head a few balls. He's going to have to get those confidence levels up. He's going to have to take a few whacks off defenders before he understands and appreciates that his body is back and able to handle the rigors of the league. And we're only talking 8 matches between now and the end of the campaign, and it's a very short timeline.
Just moving it on to the final little roundup here, I think Vardy Iheanacho, I'm keeping an eye on. I think next game week's kind of game is a big tester for me because it looks good. They're playing West Ham, and I think if Vardy or Iheanacho can look bright with Maddison also back in the midfield, I think that could be a good one. Jota is going to be an interesting one, but I do want to throw in another person to the discussion. And maybe this is just a 1 week punt, but he could be good as well because Southampton have looked good over the last 6 game weeks, an XG of 8.53, 9 goals. And obviously Ings is going to be the one there. Danny Ings could be an interesting differential towards the end of the season. This game week especially, I think could be a really good one. But we saw this with Southampton last year. So kind of looking at those, let's put this as a final question to you, Ben. You got to choose between Vardy, Ings and Jota for your team towards the end of the season. Which one do you plumb for?
Ooh, it's a tough question. I actually brought in Diogo Jota last game week, benched him first sub. Happy with that decision because it's always going to be difficult. I think Klopp likes that front three, despite the form of Jota, who's been sensational. I've got a feeling he might go with a 4 this weekend, as he did back in November against Manchester City, and maybe 2 holding midfielders, a 4-2-3-1. So that'll be interesting. If that comes off and Liverpool get a good result, Jota's a brilliant pick. I mean, he's a good pick anyway, but there's that rotation risk with Firmino. I'm going to move away from Vardy. And I think it's maybe a straight up battle with Ings. Potential. Southampton have got a lot of potential in there because I think they're in a little bit of a false position. Danny Ings, just purely from a minutes per game perspective. If he can stay fit, that's always going to be the key with him. But look, I think both great owns. Danny Ings is somebody that I could bring in this week for maybe Mikel Antonio. That's one I am looking at. So both big picks, and I'm just thinking purely from a minutes and a starting perspective. And Danny Ings is nailed if he's fit, regardless.
It's a very difficult discussion. Jota has decent form in the last 2 games, and Liverpool have decent form in terms of their abilities and we just know how good they can be, especially with Jota in the side. He might be that kind of player that they've missed to kind of bang him up a notch. Ings is Ings, and I have such an affinity towards him. And like I said, the underlying data is quite good. And Vardy, God, those games are so tempting. With Maddison back in the side, it's a hard toss-up between me. Maybe we should have made this like a head-to-head and focused on it and track the data. Maybe we will do so and cement it next week. But I like Ings as well. You know what? I'm going to have to agree with you on this occasion. I like him as a Maverick differential pick, and we just know how good he is, and he might also be playing for a transfer as well, because there are a lot of rumours circulating about him. But in terms of rumours, I hope there's lots of good ones about us here on the Premier Injuries channel. I hope that you spread those rumours by sharing and subscribing to the channel. But I'm going to pass it over to Ben to wish you luck and end the show.
Nice segue that, Jason. I like that. That was smooth. Listen, guys, thanks once again. That is attacking assets done ahead of game week 31. If you haven't checked out our defensive assets, please do so. That is already live, and there will be further content coming up. We have a Reddit community question Q&A that will be launching as well ahead of the deadline. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. All our social media channels will be posting yada, yada, yada. But for now, good luck, plenty green arrows, and take our advice if you want to fly to the top. Out, done.